Welcome to the Agape Purpose Podcast, where we celebrate those making a kingdom impact through Agape Flights. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to I've never called him, but Dr. Paul Feit.
Yeah.
He is one of our volunteer pilots, one of our volunteers on Friday with cargo. He's one of those Swiss Army knives, Paul. Just so thank you for being here today.
Happy to be here.
So I got to ask, we got to start with the story. I say Dr. Paul Feit, you are a dentist.
Right.
What brought you from dentist to mission aviation? What's that story?
Well, it started down in Honduras, really, doing some dentistry down there. And to get where we're going is off the road grid. So we're taking small airplanes and boats, whatever we need to do to get in there. It's a 2-day trip. And I've always was just hoping we could find a way to get there in a day, be more efficient with our travel. I love getting into remote places, and it's what started me thinking of maybe I need to put aviation together with dentistry.
So that brought you, and you started in Wisconsin, correct?
Right.
So you were started in Wisconsin. As you can hear, our hangar doors opening behind us. You started in Wisconsin. So how did that connection get to Honduras?
So our church up in Door County, Wisconsin, the Sturgeon Bay Moravian Church, has a missionary that has been down there for several decades. The mission itself is a clinic in Gracias a Dios, and it is a medically based mission. But we were, thinking of doing a trip, and he asked if I'd ever think about doing dental down there. And I said, well, yeah, I'd love to go do some dental. So that's how I got involved, started to get involved with that.
Nice. So obviously we say Wisconsin. So then what brought you to Florida to Agape Flights?
I got tired of shoveling snow. That's it.
I believe that.
Over 4 decades, that was enough.
Oh, my goodness. So, and then you started your own dentistry down here, correct?
Right.
Or did you take one over?
Yeah, I bought a practice.
What is the practice called?
Gulf Cove Dental.
Nice. And that is in Inglewood, correct?
Right.
So what brought that connection from there to Agape Flights?
So I still stay connected with my church in Sturgeon Bay. They're real mission-oriented, and I've kind of been, after my first trip down there, I was a young pilot when I first went to Honduras, and I thought, gosh, I feel like I could really make this work. Possibly start bringing additional groups down, maybe several weeks a year doing some dental down there. And I get to Florida, and of course I'm missing a few things to be flying over open water. I'm not commercial rated. I don't have, in fact, I'm still finishing my instrument rating, no multi-engine, but I'd come to the airport here to do my instrument training, and I'd pull up to the intersection here at the Agape hangar, and I'm like, every time I look at that thing, it's just like calling me in. I'm like, all right, keep going. I said, keep going. You don't have time for this, So finally, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to wander in there, and I go, and I've always kind of, I listen for my calling. There's times where you go maybe a year or two and nothing really comes up. You're just kind of going through and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I feel like I need to be doing this. That's what I was feeling when I would see Agape. And so I wander in, and Shay's at the front, and I do the old, I'm a pilot, and she didn't roll her eyes like physically, but, she's like, oh, another pilot. She's like, oh, man, these guys, they come in here like every day, Of course, this group is looking for, believers and mission-oriented people, and not just guys that operate the airplanes. I just, I'm like, I understand. I didn't say, she gave me the tour, and I started doing cargo on Fridays. And it's a great group of people. They're just very giving. It's very calm here. Everybody's on mission. I haven't seen any outpoints. I've been here for, years now, and it's just a great place to come, what I would say almost out of the rest of the world, almost a cocoon where we can just do our work. So then, I'm motivated, and I spent a few years getting through my other ratings. And all along, I'm just thinking, man, if I could connect this back to, getting to my other mission, we can make a big impact. And with some help from guys like Bruce and Aaron, kind of nudging people like, hey, you got to look at this guy. We think he might be able to fly.
He might be able to fly.
So finally, I kind of found my little crack and got in as first officer. So
That's so awesome. Yep. What was your first flight with Agape like? What is the story about that like? Because obviously it's unique.
So transitioning from being a solo private pilot to flying crew on a turbine airplane is a big change. Everything's faster, different airspace. Now we're covering 3 countries in a day, and it's intimidating. But I flew with Steve. He's been doing this a long time. He's calm. He can teach. He doesn't let you get away with stuff, but he can deliver direction calmly. And it was a great flight. But we leave from here, and that was a 2-day. So we flew on that trip. We were going to Bahamas to pick up fuel, and that day we went to Haiti first, did a few stops, and then to Dominican overnight. So in just one day, I was trying to understand Bahamian. That's a thick it's a thick accent. And then the verbiage they're using is different. Mm-hmm. They're asking me different questions that I'm not ready for, and I can't understand what they're saying. So after that, then we launch, and we call it Port-au-Prince when we get to Haiti, and I have no idea what they're saying. It's it's English, but it's Creole.
Yeah.
And so different, so learning those things, and then capping the day off with Spanish. It's like, so after it took a few flights to hear that dialect.
Yeah.
And understand the pattern of the words they're using and what to expect. And they still get me once in a while, but generally I'm playing along now pretty smooth.
Yeah, so it was a cultural shock for you.
Cultural shock. And, I was apprehensive about going to Haiti. I'd been there before, and I think it's unfortunate the news coverage is you'd think the whole place was burned to the ground. And unfortunately, Port-au-Prince is, but the rest of the country is gorgeous. And I feel very safe. People are wonderful. So I would encourage people to get down there.
Yeah, I think our mission partners are just such great lights to show what is really happening in Haiti. Yes, there's the despair aspect. The gangs are obviously very active, but like the movement of Christ is moving through them as well. And so you get to see that when you fly down, because you fly down probably, 2 or 3 times a month?
Couple times a month.
Yeah. Is there a spot that, really speaks to you? Is there a story that from when you landed one time that you're just like, man, I felt God in just this interaction with a certain person?
Well, I mean, I always feel like we're doing great things. I don't always particularly know the details of the cargo until we start unloading it. But what really speaks to me is the people on the ground there. They come to the airport. We see different missionaries at different times, but I mean, man, these guys are really in there. They're believers. Like you run into people like this, and you feel it. You're like these. I wouldn't say they're fearless, but they know. I don't know how I would say that, but I'm sure they're afraid at times. But the things they're doing without worrying about, they're just counting on God to take care of them. The story's written. They're just living the story. They're amazing. You go to Jack Mall, and Andy's down there. He's ministering in the prison. I'm thinking, could you find a few Americans here you could send down to Haiti? And they're like, yeah, show me the prison. I mean, these people it's amazing to meet them and see what they're doing.
Yeah, the calling is so unique down there. Like, it's not like, again, not focusing on the fear aspect. It's just like there's an isolation down there as well. And they don't care because it's a calling. And it's just so unique to hear when like you, Greg, and any of the pilots come back, because the stories you have is always so different from that.
Yeah, and they're just happy.
Yeah.
I mean the adversity. Andy, just since I was talking about him, a few maybe a half year ago, and it was getting kind of bad again, traveling on roads, and the gangs were setting up roadblocks and charging tolls to pass. And you talk to him. I was in Port-au-Prince yesterday. I'm like, well, how's it going? He's like, well, I mean, pretty typical. We had to stop at some roadblocks and pay to get through. And he's just like, it was his day. He's just like, yeah, I mean, so they just overcome, and it's amazing to see them work. Then show up happy. They're laughing and joking. And
Andy is so unique because, again, this guy just basically broke his back too, and he's back to serving immediately in these prisons that, a very, very unsafe area as it is. And now you're going to add, he's going into these prisons because that's his calling. I'm just like, he is one of the 300 people that we could just sit here and tell stories about how God is just using them so mightily in these countries.
Yeah, each stop is, we have more of the usual guys that come and do the pickup, and in Lakai, it's Lee, and every spot's got. They're just happy people, and they're serving in some of the hardest places, and it really makes you think. These guys are on mission. They're following their call. They put things aside, and they're joyful.
It really put it in perspective, because they come here and they'll stop by and tell stories. And like you said, there's always joy in everything they do. And then you just kind of like, it hits you in the gut because you're just like, man, I don't even experience what they're going through in that, the turbulence, and they're still having that joy. And here I'm complaining about because, I stubbed my toe or something so goofy over here. And it puts everything in perspective.
When we come back from the field, maybe not on a day trip, but a little bit, but when we do a week, and you've done some time out in the mission field, there's a reentry period where you step back on American soil, and then you start looking around. And for me, it's my private kind of laugh at the homeowners association and the hedge subcommittee, and it's like, and then you see, in a lot of ways, a lack of joy in some of the hustle and bustle we go through. We're by all means very rich. Even our people don't feel rich are very rich compared to the world, and
worse.
It's really a great way to refocus, is to get in the field, even for little short bits and pieces, and just talk to these people, and it recenters you, and it kind of makes you think, well, where should I be long term? Yeah. I mean, dentistry's certainly mission oriented. I'm helping people, for sure. People in pain, they're having problems, but the flying part it's fun because it's just a totally different avenue.
You talked about how, you've come on some of these, week-long trips with us. Talk about a little bit of a story of one. I mean, we obviously just came from Bahamas last year. Yeah. Is there a story from that really spoke to you when we were on that trip?
Well, Bahamas so I get to see the Bahamas twice a month from the air. It's the most beautiful place I know of. Now, I've never been to the South Pacific, but I'm telling you, if you haven't gotten out there, it's an interesting dichotomy because it's so beautiful. And if you read a little bit about their history, they don't have a ton of resources, and it shows. The Nassau is one thing. That's what you see on the cruise ships. But the out islands, where it's really pretty, you see a lot of poverty. And so it was interesting to see. We visited maybe you call it a colony, maybe an encampment's a better word, the Haitian encampment there. What was the name of that again?
I believe it was Black. We're close to it, but it's a Haitian encampment that like displaced people were pushed into.
So basically, what they're living in is incredibly poor conditions. So we went in there to distribute some things like diapers and formula and things for the young moms and maybe a soccer ball. And it's even in the Bahamas, those people are pushed out. It's like the Haitians can't find a place to settle down, which is, again, why going down to Haiti, I think, is so critical, because if Christ's word doesn't spread there, it's doomed to do this forever. Yeah. But to the Bahamas, I guess what would stand out to me is really visiting those people, and even there, they were pushed out, and they would, was it a community center they burned down there or bulldozed? Yep. So they had a little community center. They were trying to kind of establish themselves, and the government just bulldozing. They didn't want them there. It's rougher. They come to the U.S. and they get pushed out. It's very hard for them to find a place to escape. Very hard for them to live in their country. It's a good group of people to help. They have a lot of challenges.
And again, going back to that joy is like they had nothing, but we'd come out there and we were just playing soccer with them, and you could just see the joy of just the interaction with us meant the world to them. And it's just like, oh, what is wrong with me here? I'm complaining about the littlest things in my life, and these guys have nothing, and they're not even complaining to us.
Yeah, particularly the kids aren't really aware yet that they're supposed to be sad about their surroundings. Yeah. They're just running around like any other kid. And
it's like you said, like it's a very surreal effect when you come back to the States for that week afterwards, because you're just like, oh, where do I go from here, basically? So
a good reset.
Yeah, it is. So I want to talk about your ministry, and Honduras. Obviously recently we flew you and your team down to Honduras. Yeah. Talk about that. Talk about the trip. Talk about why you continue wanting to do that.
So I have a penchant for adventure, and in my younger years, that would wind up in a little bit of trouble. We used to light pine cones on fire and throw them like hand grenades, that kind of stuff, But I always like being kind of out on the fringe, seeing these new places, and this type of flying really takes that certain pilot. We don't have coffee going up front. We don't have the comfort of restrooms, and a lot of times no AC. But man, we're on the edge. We're on the frontier, and so the village of Aguas in Honduras is in the department of Gracias a Dios, and that's very remote. You will see people paddling an actual dugout canoe with homemade paddles, and it's amazing when you get there. But so that's why I like it, because it's way out on the edge. There was a dentist from Ohio going once a year and just doing fillings. So there was a dental room set up in this quote-unquote hospital, but it's really primitive compared to what we would call a hospital. But So I went the first time and I used his room, and I just focused on extracting infected teeth. Of course, we didn't get to see everybody that needed to be seen, and did the best we could. We made an impact on maybe a few hundred people, maybe only 150 on that first visit.
How many extractions do you think you did on that?
Maybe a couple hundred, maybe 250, maybe. But but you know what? That was maybe 150 people that didn't have a toothache anymore. Yeah. It meant a lot to them. So we kind of, we went back with a bigger group. We took a group of 18 down. And that was when the runway was in better condition. We could land a twin turbine there. So that group, we were able to now go out to other villages. So now we started seeing villages that probably hadn't had a dentist there, at least not a North American, maybe ever, and really doing some impact on that. And that's where, you kind of start seeing this. Well, what if I could just get an airplane straight from the States instead of this airline, one-day drive and overnight, and then get in these small planes that they always overload, and they haven't had inspections like the U.S. It's pretty sketchy. And what if we could control that portion and just launch out of the U.S. and land here? Well, then COVID hit. Then everything stopped. Travel internationally to that area was not happening. And by the time we got back, the runway's in bad shape, but still kind of seeing that vision. And I get flying here, and I'm always still thinking, maybe these guys would do me a favor and we can get Agape to get us down to Honduras, or maybe just get our stuff down there. I don't want to get outside of the mission here. I know you guys are focused on cargo, but we've been doing more passenger stuff on. Has to be the right stuff going on. But so finally, things are opening up down there again. We did a couple trips after the pandemic, and then I thought, well, I was flying with Greg, and when we got a few hours or so to burn, we're just cruising along, and I said, what do you think about Honduras? Any chance you could get me and maybe a few people down there? And he's like, oh yeah, I've been there doing some. I think it was hurricane relief, quite a few years back. But he's like, yeah, we know about Honduras. We've been trying to get that set up. I know you guys were trying to form some co-ops down there, and so I'm like, okay, well. So then, as I start organizing the trip for this spring, I talked to Greg, and he's like, all right, let's go ask Alan. So we wander up there, and he's. Hey, Alan, what do you think about running a dental team up down to Honduras? He goes, yeah, sure, yeah. Like it was like he mulled it over for a minute.
Yeah.
20 seconds. And so it's just that amazing willingness, because that's a big ask. We're going into a different country. There's logistics with flight plans and customs, and there's a lot of unknowns. Really, it's an expensive piece of equipment. We need to keep these things operating, or the whole operation gets crippled. All those things. So, and that was it. So Greg gave me some weights, and I told him, here's our passengers. We're planning. I can being a pilot. I understand how this plane loads out. It's I fly it regularly, and it was easy to coordinate. I know Greg, so we kind of got all that queued up, and then Agape. I'm not sure where it came from. If it was Alan, but he's like, we've had funds raised for Honduras, and then they were willing to foot the bill for the trip. And I said, well, that had a huge impact because it frees up funds for me to get a little more equipment down there, maybe a little more medicine, and a trip like this we had 12 people, we probably spent $36,000 in and out with everything we're trying to do with supplies and equipment. So it was huge help, and it was amazing, just the willingness, just the openness, like, let's go. So I know we're with the right partners. I still have trouble seeing what the end point is. That's what I always struggle with, because I feel like I want to have it, but I know I can't have it. It's not supposed to have it yet. But but if we could improve the runway in Awas, so it originally was landing C-130s when the U.S. government was operating down there. Think like Iran Contra, Nicaragua.
Oh, wow. It's a while ago.
Think the 80s. So that's what these airstrips were supporting, and so the bases there, it needs to be graded. But we flew over Awas on our last leg. It took, in 12 minutes, we'd landed in Puerto Lempira. It took us an overnight and a 5.5-hour boat ride plus a 45-minute truck ride to get back to Awas. Wow. And we covered that in 10 minutes in an airplane. So Gracias a Dios is in the do not travel area, which seems to be Agape's specialty, between Cuba, Haiti, and now Honduras. But so when you're staying overnight in Puerto Lempira, there's heavily armed policemen with masks on, riding around in back of pickup trucks. It's totally drug land.
Gotcha.
It's not a place where you just go hang out. So, from a safety perspective, to not go there would have been great, but that's how we had to get in. So we stayed overnight. At 2:30 in the morning, we got up, and we loaded the boats and departed the dock at 3 a.m. And we were so loaded, I could hold the rail and touch my fingers to the water.
Wow.
And so we're rolling, and it's like 5.5 hours sitting on a wooden board. That's hard for Americans. We're not used to that kind of stuff. And no bathroom, we're in a lagoon, and we had to leave early because when the waves come up, it's too dangerous. So I'm wondering still if there's a way to make that last link. I don't know, maybe. Of course, Greg's up for it. He doesn't seem to have a limit.
Greg doesn't have the word no in his vocabulary. He's like, let's figure it out.
Yeah, he loves being out there in that kind of stuff. So maybe that's possible. Maybe that's not where we're going. But from almost 10 years ago now, that's what I saw. It was like, man, if we could link this, it would change things here. So, we'll keep going. We'll keep kind of building into that. I have 5 years of hard full-time work left before I need to be doing something in addition, and maybe that's what I taper into.
What did it mean to have your wife and your daughter on that trip, though?
Oh, it's huge because, for your kids, both my kids have been there. My daughter was the only one that came on this trip, but
oh, I apologize. I thought your wife.
My son's been there along. No, my wife was.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So, we took the whole family on a different trip a few years back, and my daughter's now in. I don't know. I think it was her 5th year of Spanish, and she's got a heart for service. We do a lot of dog rescues and stuff that she just loves doing that stuff. We've done Guatemala. We've done some other things. So she gets into it. It's fun to see. And with her Spanish, she's starting to learn a little more that way. My wife loves doing this kind of stuff. She's a little adverse to the rough conditions, although we've done some things to improve our living quarters down there, which has helped a lot. But, if I'm going to do this going forward and commit more time, it's got to be, for sure, my wife's got to be on board because I don't think it's beneficial to go leave for a month without her. I'd love her to be with. I mean, that would be a lot more fun to do it as a team. So she had a very good time.
Good.
So
can you tell a little bit about that experience? Because obviously I got to hear your story, but tell what it's like to, what you guys did there, what you guys improved there, and what was it like sleeping at night? Because I think that was a pretty funny story.
When we first started going, we stayed in homes that had like planks for walls. So you can see out the cracks, the knots that fall out, and at night it's like wild America in there. You tuck in your mosquito netting and you're sleeping on a plywood bed with a 3-inch worn out pad. The people that help take care of they're very nice. The sheets are clean. Like they do the best they can with what they have. But, the cockroaches it was unbelievable. Like you don't want to get out of your screen at night. It's not what we're used to. And after a few days, I got good. I was, you've seen 1,000 cockroaches.
Yeah.
Okay, you start to get a little, and every morning at about 4:30, one of the pastors in town fires up some kind of loudspeaker with music at like very loud volume, and he sings, not well, but joyfully. And so at first you're like, you're trying to get used to sleeping in the heat.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get to sleep. 4:30 in the morning, there's this guy singing, but he's giving it all. And then when he's done, the sun starts to crack and the parrots start going crazy. There's a roost of parrots above the house. It's so loud, it's unbelievable. And, it takes a lot of getting used to the first couple of days. I'm more used to it now. I don't get bothered by the chickens and the parrots and all that. It's just part of the background now. Yeah. But so that house, thank goodness, finally been torn down. And we put up some concrete structures. So now we sleep on the second floor. The bugs are way, way, way less, and much, much better. So that helps because you get spiders the size of your hand running through the bedroom. There are some people who that's it, they're done. Yeah. Like that's level 10. They're not good.
I get it.
So we're making improvements that way. So the sleeping was better. The power is better. They used to shut it off at 10 because it was all generator, and they've since upgraded the solar. So now we have battery bank, so we have power all night, which that was unusual. It used to just be blackout, 10 p.m., boom. And so that's improved. There are still some building projects that are badly in need of being done, but there's been work being done. So
yeah, and I it's cool because also on this trip there was another Agape volunteer, Kevin.
Yeah,
and he was telling me some stories about when he was installing the chair. I don't know if you want to continue that story because I think it's pretty funny.
Kevin and I work together daily when I'm here. He's a dental ceramist, so he makes crowns for us. But and we fly together a lot. He's a pilot. He's got a really hard time saying no. Also, he likes to kind of go, not really be in trouble, but be on the edge. Like let's go for some adventure. So I figured he'd be in. He was in, no problem. And the second dental suite we had set up. I call it a suite, but but we do have like an American dental chair you would recognize down there. Every time we'd go up to that room, some bats would start flying around. And so that's not good because you're off the road grid and there's a chance of rabies exposure.
Yeah.
So the question would be, if you get touched, the protocol would be to go get your vaccines. Well, what if we don't have any? So are you going to now fly someone out? It's a 2-day trip to get them airlined to get vaccines. Do you think they're exposed? Are you going to take the chance? It's kind of a bad scenario. I played it out in my head and I don't like it, but I think we'd probably have to evacuate them to be safe because if you get rabies, it's bad.
Yeah.
So we go in, so we're like hitting the deck, screaming. There's, and then they go, so all right, come back a half hour later, and they're in there again. And I'm like, finally, we caught them. They were living in the dental chair. Okay, so they apparently like to go back to their roost, and they were roosted under where the feet are in the dental chair. So now we're like, oh my gosh, the way they build their walls there, they leave a gap in the top to let air move. And that's where they were coming and going. And then they'd hang out in the dental chair. So we go in there with a lid from something and a broom. We start beating on the chair, so then they start flying around. And then when they get out, we're trying to hurry up and pound screen up there.
Yeah.
As we're pounding the screen, they're shooting through, and we're ducking, and it's at least 100 in there. It's always hot, and they're bouncing off the screen we're holding, trying to get back in their roost. And we're I'm gonna tell you, that was a first in dentistry. But we got it done, and God is watching us. Nobody's exposed, all those things. But those are the types of things you just,
I
just
think
comes up.
it's so cool to see how God works, because like you and Kevin are some of the most even keeled people I've ever met. So like if it was anyone else who had even just a slight wasn't tolerant to it, would have lost their minds. But you guys are just probably just like, yeah, it's fine, just keep coming.
We've had mice go running through there, and the one gal is very afraid of mice. And she jumps up on the chair and yelling. We've had those big giant spiders, and the one gal with me grew up in Russia in her early years, and then came to the States, so she had a harder upbringing. We doing the dentist. There's a giant spider up there, and I said, "Oh, look at that!" And she's like, just like keeps suctioning away, like. So the crew I bring they're getting pretty hardened, but some of them are. We had a scorpion incident this year, and you thought someone was getting murdered in that room.
Because it's never just one scorpion, correct?
Yeah, there's those things that we're not used to, but you do get used to it. I mean, I can take out a roach with a flip flop from about 10 feet now, so I'm pretty good. But
that's awesome. So, what is it like working in those conditions? Because obviously, you're used to a very sterile environment. How does that affect you guys as you're going about these because you're going to remote villages? Excuse me, right?
Right. So one of the big things we did this year is with having Agape's Flights, we were able to take a full-size sterilizer down, and they weigh about 80 pounds. And if you airline that and they throw it around, you get in there and it's broken. It's just it, and that one, even with my supplier helping me get the price down for mission work, it was still $4,000. I mean, they're not cheap. So we got that in. That really helped the operation. We try really hard to not use cold sterilization. We have a system for doing that. We try to I've got a small sterilizer and I have the regular one. And we also were able to bring a generator down this year. Last time we tried running one of their local generators, the power was too dirty. It kept blowing the breaker on our generator, or on our sterilizer. So we typically are able to run a steam autoclave. I would say this year was 100% of the time. So, do no harm. That's always our motto in medicine, dentistry. And so it's like, I have to be certain this stuff's sterile.
Yeah.
And in this environment, it's hard because the generator's got to run so we got the new generator, the new sterilizer. We've got the portable sterilizer, and all that comes with us. I have a portable dental unit that has suction and a drill. Sometimes when you're taking teeth out, if something breaks, you need a drill to get the roots out, that kind of stuff. So we load it up. It goes on motorcycles. It goes on horses. It goes on boats. We're always riding in the back of trucks. We just pile our gear on and we kind of load on top of it. And sometimes the boat ride's 2 hours. Sometimes it's about 2 to 3. We're going up a couple different rivers to get to villages. We do take a truck to a nearby village, and we worked in I would have called it a woodshed, but it was their medical center. It was pretty rough, termites and all kinds of stuff going on. But so we know our instruments are clean. It's hard. It's hard to even get gloves on. You're so hot. You sweat through your scrubs. I have a towel I have to carry to wipe my hands. I have to powder my hands to get my gloves back on. You're trying to not be dehydrated, and it's very hard. We're doing extractions in upright chairs, so by the fourth day, your back is just killing you. I'm kneeling down, taking teeth out, so it's all in. And the right kind of dentists really enjoy it. Like it's a mission centered. We hate to not see people. We can never get through them all, but it's basically run and gun. Do what we can, get as many bad teeth out as we can. So
why are there so many bad teeth down there?
So sugar's found its way there. I can go down to the local store and buy Coke. But even cheaper than Coke are these bags of sugar water, colored like maybe they make like a fake lemonade. And the kids bite the corner off and suck on them. So if you get those for what we maybe a couple pennies.
Mm-hmm.
So they like we might when we were a kid, maybe we'd run down and get a candy bar. Well, they don't have that kind of money, so they might run down and get a bag of sugar water.
So
you see them walking around all day sucking on these things.
And they don't have any of the preventive care like we do here.
I would even say probably no idea what to do. So we brought 600 toothbrushes and about 40 pounds of toothpaste on this trip. And I think our next step would be doing some preventive care in the schools.
So is that like teaching them how to actually brush
their
their teeth?
And doing toothbrushing.
When you told us that, I was just like, man, what? I feel like they would be eating more natural foods down there, but then you tell me about the sugar water.
But it's changed.
Yeah. Yep. And is that because of the influence of like Western culture starting to bleed down? Yeah.
So now with satellite internet, before the pandemic, you couldn't communicate with me down there. Actually, I had a kind of a rudimentary satellite communicator where I could punch a message to my wife, I'm still alive, have a good night, And when it came back after the pandemic, they had Dish, and now they have phones. And I even watched a soccer match there once. I was like, well, this is kind of weird now,
Yeah.
And it's to the point now where I can call out on my cell phone.
Why is that? So, like, why did the government start to push that?
I'm not sure who pushed it or if it was a private company who thought, well, if we get a tower there, maybe there's enough people. I don't even know where they get the money to pay for the minutes, to be honest. But that was a game changer. And so now the culture starts to change, right? Because you get TV, you get phone. Phone is a big deal, and so that changes how we eat. Because what do we watch all day? Food commercials, and that kind of stuff. So
it's that propaganda food, you know. It's like, so I want to bring us to a close a little bit. I want to finish with asking you a question. What does the Agape Purpose mean to you? What would you summarize that to be?
Well, what I see here is just people all in on doing God's work. Everybody plays a little different piece. Not everybody here's in the field by any means. I think most of the people on staff, I think you guys are out at least once a year or so. They like to get you out to see people. But the volunteers are from all over, and everybody, when they get together and move in the same direction, it's amazing what can be done. And I've not even met probably a quarter of the people involved here because there's a lot of people behind the scenes contributing and helping in different ways. And you see a lot of maybe one pie in the sky, but how big the organization really is. But what it means to me is it's a place where I can go and push the mission forward and maybe spread the word of Christ and try to. That's really the only solution to these problems we see is whether it's the narcos and gracias a Dios, they want to push that whole place one other way. They want to control it so they can traffic things. Well, the Christians there, that's their only chance because they don't have the money to go against that kind of stuff. If they have the belief and they can, protect their hearts and try to live the right way. And in Haiti, if, what do you do against gang violence and people burning down stuff? And well, it starts with the belief and, following in God's ways. And if we aren't there to teach them and help the people deliver things to them to help them with their mission, what are we doing, I guess? So.
Sometimes I just get lost in your words because you're just so poetic with how you describe things. Last final question for you. So when people talk about Dr. Paul Feit, which is still weird to say doctor because you'll never say like it's doctor because you're just so humble. But anyways, when people talk about Dr. Paul Feit and Agape, what do you want to be remembered as?
Well, I mean, I would hope to just be an example of getting out there. I mean, I think there's so many reasons to not do this. You're so busy. You have to stop being busy. Like at some point in your life, you have to realize the American dream has changed and you need to center your life. And yes, you know what? I still have a nice car. I have a nice house. I have kids that I take care of, but we pause in our family and we made sure our kids know who Christ is and we teach them the values that we think are important, not always the things they're seeing being flooded at them, but I think you need to put aside a day, a half a day, and just make it a regular part of your week to go do something, whether it's a Bible study or volunteer anywhere. In particular, in our community, we have so many wonderful retirees who have been very successful. And I see some of them struggle in retirement because their identities changed. They were a this, or they were a that, or they ran this. And then now they're playing pickleball, which is great. But also in that, go push this purpose forward a little bit, you know. I'm still working, but I could make more money on Fridays going back to work. I don't want to. I want to be here pushing this mission forward, because the things I receive from that are far more valuable than that last day of work I could have plugged in, you know, to go buy another something. So,
No, I love that. I think so oftentimes the message is misconstrued, especially in this area, is like, what is purpose of life once you're retired? A lot of them is just like, I'm just here to exist. And it's like, no, God's not done with you. Yeah. God's not done with you. There's still purpose.
Maybe remember me as someone who had all the same reasons you do to not be here, but I took some time and put it aside and went, you know. That would be. You do
go quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have, Paul. Thank you so much again. Appreciate this. I love hearing your heart and hearing your stories. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
So
happy to be here.
Thank you guys for listening. Tune in next week for someone else. I don't know if they'll be as exciting as Paul, but you know, we'll see. Until then, God bless.